Have you ever wondered why, at a certain point in your life, being surrounded by people stops feeling like connection and starts feeling like noise? It is a strange moment, almost unsettling, when the crowd that once felt familiar suddenly becomes a place where your spirit no longer fits. Something inside you shifts, something subtle but undeniable. This is the first sign of spiritual awakening, the moment when your inner perception becomes sharper than the surface-level interactions around you. And if you have ever sat in a room full of people and felt an inexplicable sense of disconnection, you are not broken. You are waking up. There comes a quiet realization that most conversations are repetitions of the same patterns, the same fears disguised as opinions, the same performances people wear without noticing. And while everyone else seems comfortable participating, you begin to feel a restlessness, a gentle inner pull that whispers there is more beneath the surface. This is not arrogance. It is not antisocial behavior. It is awareness expanding beyond the limits of the environment. The awakened mind starts sensing emotional undercurrents, inauthenticity, tension people ignore, and the energetic weight that crowds carry. What once felt normal now feels heavy. This shift creates a distance, not because you choose to isolate yourself, but because your inner clarity no longer tolerates what your old self accepted without question. And if you have felt this transition, if something in you has been signaling that your spirit no longer aligns with the crowd, you are not alone. You are moving into a deeper state of consciousness where presence matters more than social approval and truth matters more than belonging. You have stepped into a new way of seeing, one that changes everything quietly, irreversibly. And tell me, have you ever noticed this happening to you? Has a familiar environment suddenly felt too small for your awareness? You can share your experience in the comments because your story might reflect someone else's awakening. And if this message is already resonating, remember to leave a like and check whether you are subscribed to the channel, since understanding this kind of content can open doors you did not know were there. Now, as this inner shift unfolds, something even more revealing begins to happen. As that inner shift deepens, something even more extraordinary begins to unfold. Your perception starts expanding in ways you cannot easily explain. Suddenly, you are not just hearing what people say, you are sensing what they avoid saying. You notice the tension beneath a polite smile, the exhaustion behind forced enthusiasm, the fear behind loud opinions. It is as if the world around you becomes transparent, revealing layers of truth that were always there, but hidden beneath the noise of everyday life. You start feeling the emotional climate of a room before a single word is spoken, and this heightened sensitivity redraws your entire understanding of human behavior. What once passed unnoticed now becomes unmistakable. You can see when someone is performing a version of themselves. You can feel when someone is disconnected from what they say, and you begin to recognize how much of society operates through unconscious patterns, roles, and expectations people follow without questioning. The awakened mind does not absorb these patterns the way it once did. Instead, it observes them. And this observation creates a quiet inner separation, a gentle stepping back from the collective script that everyone seems committed to playing. You might find yourself wondering when exactly things changed. When did the laughter that once felt genuine begin to sound rehearsed? When did conversations start feeling predictable, as though everyone were repeating lines they memorized long ago? It is not that the world has become different. It is you. Your awareness has widened, and with that widening comes a new kind of clarity, one that does not allow you to remain blind to what once comforted you. This expanded perception is not a choice, nor is it a skill you intentionally developed. It is a natural consequence of awakening, an inner evolution that shifts your relationship with the world. You begin to see that most people are not truly present. They are caught in mental loops, emotional habits, and inherited beliefs. And while this realization does not make you superior, it inevitably creates distance, because you can no longer participate in the same unconscious rhythm without feeling its weight. Yet this widening of awareness is only the beginning. As your perception sharpens, another internal tension emerges, one that challenges your ability to remain in environments that no longer resonate with the clarity growing inside you. As your perception sharpens, you begin to sense an unspoken friction whenever you remain too long in environments shaped by collective behavior. It is not a conflict expressed through words or actions. Instead, it is a subtle inner clash between what your consciousness now perceives and what the crowd continues to embody. People move through life following invisible rules, reacting rather than responding, repeating emotional patterns they never examine. And while you were once synchronized with this rhythm, your awakening creates a separation that becomes increasingly impossible to ignore. You start noticing how often people speak without truly listening, how frequently they defend beliefs they have never questioned, and how deeply they cling to certainty to avoid confronting their own internal discomfort. The awakened mind, however, cannot operate under these same conditions. It seeks authenticity, presence, and a type of clarity that challenges the surface narratives most people use to navigate the world. This difference creates tension, not because you impose your awareness on others, but because your energy no longer blends seamlessly into environments built on unconscious repetition. There is a moment when you realize you can predict the emotional pattern of a conversation before it unfolds. You know which subjects trigger defensiveness, which comments will be misunderstood, which truths people are unwilling to face. And the more you notice these patterns, the more exhausting it becomes to participate in them. It is like watching a familiar play, one where every character follows a script they never chose but continue performing because it feels safer than rewriting their role. Your elevated consciousness does not argue with the crowd, nor does it seek to prove itself. Instead, it becomes increasingly silent, observing the layers of conditioning that shape reactions, expectations, and assumptions. And as you observe, the gap grows wider. The noise that once blended into the background now feels overwhelming. The small talk that used to feel harmless now feels hollow. The environments that once offered belonging now feel dense, as though the energy around you moves in a slower frequency than the one within you. This clash is not meant to isolate you permanently. It is an early stage of awakening that reveals how misaligned the outer world can become when the inner world expands. And just as this misalignment intensifies, another realization emerges, one that shifts your relationship with emotional energy and the weight you unconsciously absorbed for most of your life. As you continue moving through the world with heightened awareness, another layer of awakening becomes impossible to ignore: the emotional weight you absorb from others. People carry unresolved tension, hidden fears, unspoken frustrations, and a constant background noise of internal conflict. Most never notice the burden they project into the space around them, but someone with elevated sensitivity does. You begin to feel the emotional atmosphere the same way others feel. Temperature changes. Crowded spaces take on a heaviness, as though you are walking through the emotional residue of dozens of unprocessed experiences. This sensitivity is not about fragility. It is about perception. When the mind awakens, it no longer filters out the emotional signals that most people overlook. You sense when someone is anxious, long before they show it. You pick up on unspoken resentments, quiet sadness, concealed disappointment. Even casual interactions start revealing entire emotional histories hidden behind a simple gesture or a brief expression, and the more aware you become, the harder it is to stay indifferent to the constant emotional output of the crowd. This creates a natural desire for distance, not because you reject people, but because you feel them too deeply. Their unresolved conflicts echo inside you, their frustration weighs on your energy, and their inner chaos clouds your clarity. What others brush off as a normal social environment becomes a place where you subconsciously process the emotional load of everyone around you. And the more you try to remain present, the more you sense the contrast between your internal calm and the turbulence others carry without noticing. At times, you may even find yourself withdrawing, not out of avoidance but out of preservation. Your nervous system begins to crave environments where the emotional volume is lower, where the atmosphere feels clean, where your mind can breathe without absorbing the storms of others. You become selective not out of judgment, but out of necessity. This shift in relational dynamics is one of the most misunderstood effects of spiritual awakening. The openness of your heart increases, yet your tolerance for emotional noise decreases. And in the middle of this internal transformation, one quiet question emerges, shaping the next stage of your awakening. As the emotional weight of others becomes clearer to you, something unexpected begins to take shape within your inner world. What once felt like loneliness starts transforming into a very different experience, one that most people never reach because they have never stepped far enough away from the noise to truly sense themselves. The solitude that follows spiritual awakening is not emptiness. It is expansion. It is the first time you can hear your own consciousness without interference, and the silence that once felt intimidating begins to feel like a companion. While ordinary loneliness is the absence of company, awakened, solitude is the presence of clarity. It is the moment when you realize that being alone does not mean being disconnected. Instead, it means reconnecting with a part of yourself that was always overshadowed by expectations, obligations, and the emotional storms of others. This form of solitude does not shrink your world, it widens it. You begin noticing thoughts that were previously drowned out by distraction. You sense intuitions that once slipped past, unnoticed. You feel your inner voice with a strength you never realized it possessed. There is a calmness in this stage that surprises many people. You are no longer chasing validation, approval, or constant interaction. The pressure to perform disappears. The need to fit in dissolves. And in that absence, a new kind of presence arises. You begin to understand your emotional landscape more clearly. You recognize what nourishes your spirit and what drains it. You no longer confuse temporary comfort with genuine connection. This shift can be disorienting at first, because society teaches people to fear being alone, to equate silence with insignificance, and to believe fulfillment comes only through external relationships. But awakening flips this script. It shows you that solitude is not a void to fill, but a space to breathe. And as you settle into this space, you begin to feel something even more profound, your energy reorganizing itself, your intuition sharpening, your sense of purpose subtly forming. You are not withdrawing from the world. You are preparing for a new way of engaging with it. But before that transformation becomes visible, another internal process begins. The slow, natural shedding of environments and relationships that can no longer support the consciousness growing inside you. As your solitude deepens, a quiet but powerful shift occurs. You begin to notice which spaces, routines, and relationships no longer resonate with the awareness that has emerged within you. Places that once brought comfort may now feel stifling. Conversations that once entertained now seem trivial, and connections that once defined your social identity start to feel energetically draining. It is not a conscious judgment or a moral evaluation. It is simply an intuitive recognition that certain energies, dynamics, and interactions are no longer compatible with the clarity growing inside you. This natural disengagement is subtle. At first, it manifests as fatigue, a lingering sense of unease after social events, or a quiet resistance to familiar routines. You may find yourself leaving gatherings early, skipping events you once attended without question, or simply feeling invisible in crowds that were once familiar. This is not avoidance. It is alignment. Your consciousness is recalibrating, shifting toward environments that match your heightened perception and the subtle frequency of your emerging inner truth. As you step back from these previously valued connections, you may feel tension or guilt, especially when others fail to understand the change. Friends and colleagues may perceive your withdrawal as disinterest, judgment, or rejection. But the reality is profoundly different. You are not turning away from people themselves. You are turning toward your own expanded awareness, creating space to integrate the new perspective that cannot coexist comfortably with the old dynamics. The social rules, emotional dramas, and unconscious patterns that once shaped your life now appear incongruent with your inner experience. Over time, this disengagement reveals another subtle truth. When you allow yourself to step away from what no longer serves your consciousness, you make room for clarity, energy, and creativity to flourish. You begin attracting experiences, environments, and people that resonate more deeply with your true nature. It is as if life itself begins responding to the integrity of your awareness, providing opportunities that align with the expanded vision you are cultivating. And yet this process is not always smooth. It comes with a series of internal adjustments, a redefinition of priorities, and a delicate balancing of loyalty, love, and presence. As these shifts occur, you may notice an increasing gap between your inner reality and the external world, setting the stage for the next evolution, the profound depth that automatically distances those who remain in the superficial rhythms of collective life. As your consciousness expands, something subtle but unmistakable begins to happen. People who are still attached to superficial rhythms naturally drift away from you. It is not a conscious choice on your part. It is an energetic divergence. When you start moving inward, when you begin valuing silence over noise, truth over performance, depth over distraction, your very presence exposes the uncomfortable contrast between inner clarity and outer superficiality. And most people are not ready to confront that contrast. Your depth becomes a mirror. It reflects back to others their own avoidance, their own emotional disconnection, their own unexamined habits. Some people feel unsettled around you without knowing why. Others may perceive your calmness as distance, your introspection as coldness, your clarity as challenge. But none of this is personal. It is simply the way energy reorganizes itself when two levels of consciousness no longer move in the same direction. You begin to notice how differently conversations unfold. What others consider meaningful may feel empty to you. What others find exciting may feel chaotic. You no longer resonate with gossip, competition, or trivial conflicts. Your mind seeks coherence, your heart seeks authenticity, and your spirit rejects anything that feels performative. This change does not make you isolated. It simply filters your world, allowing only what aligns with your awakened state to enter your space. People sense this shift, even if they cannot explain it. Some may withdraw because they feel exposed in your presence. Others may cling to you, drawn to the calm they do not yet understand. But many will simply fade out of your life as naturally as leaves falling when the season changes. And instead of forcing connection, you begin to trust the quiet intelligence behind this distancing. You realize that your growth is guiding the flow of relationships more accurately than any conscious effort ever could. This depth is not a wall. It is an invitation to a new level of existence, one that only those ready to awaken can approach. And as your inner landscape becomes more profound, the world around you slowly reshapes itself, preparing you for the next phase of this transformation, one where your priorities and values shift in ways you never anticipated. As this inner depth becomes your natural state, a profound reorganization of your priorities quietly begins. It does not happen in a dramatic, sudden moment. Instead, it unfolds, slowly, like a curtain being drawn back to reveal a landscape you never noticed before. Things that once mattered deeply start losing their importance. The goals you chased, the roles you played, the approval you sought, all begin to feel strangely disconnected from who you are becoming. It is not that life becomes meaningless. It is that the meaning you once assigned to everything no longer fits the person you are now. You notice this shift first in the small things. The conversations you once tolerated now feel like distractions. The activities you once pursued out of habit no longer nourish you. Even your ambitions start to feel foreign, as though they belong to a version of you that no longer exists. Instead of seeking stimulation, you crave authenticity. Instead of chasing recognition, you seek alignment. Instead of filling your time, you now pay attention to what fills your spirit. This transition can be disorienting because the world around you continues operating under its old logic, expecting you to remain who you once were. People may wonder why you are no longer motivated by the same rewards or why you no longer participate in the same routines, but awakening reshapes your values from the inside out. You begin valuing presence over productivity, meaning over achievement, quiet truth over loud distraction. Your internal compass shifts, pointing you toward a life guided not by external pressure, but by inner coherence. What surprises many people is how natural this shift feels once it begins. You are not forcing yourself to change. You are remembering what genuinely matters. And as this remembering strengthens, you start letting go of anything that once kept you tangled in unconscious patterns. Your priorities refine themselves, becoming simpler yet deeper. And with each refinement, your sense of direction grows clearer. But this clarity also requires something essential: a period of withdrawal, a phase where you step back from the external world, not out of fear but out of necessity, allowing your expanded awareness to integrate fully before you return to life with a new orientation. And it is in this quiet, inward phase that the next stage of the awakening journey reveals itself. As your priorities shift and your inner landscape becomes more refined, you are drawn into a quiet and necessary period of withdrawal. This is not isolation born from fear or avoidance. It is a natural pause, a gentle retreat that allows your expanding awareness to find stability. When consciousness changes, the mind and the emotional body need time to reorganize themselves. You begin to feel that the noise of constant interaction no longer matches the delicate clarity forming inside you. And so, without making an announcement or a deliberate choice, you slowly step back from the external world. This withdrawal feels different from previous moments of solitude. It is purposeful. It carries a sense of inner necessity, as though your spirit is guiding you towards silence so you can hear what you were unable to perceive before. Thoughts that once felt scattered start aligning. Emotions that were tangled begin to unravel. You realize that the awakening you are experiencing is not merely an intellectual shift, but a deep restructuring of your inner environment. To integrate what you are learning, you need space. You need quiet. You need time away from the collective rhythm. During this phase, even simple interactions may feel overwhelming. Words feel louder. Emotions feel heavier. Social energy feels intrusive. Your sensitivity intensifies because your inner world is recalibrating, releasing what no longer belongs and strengthening what does. People may misinterpret this withdrawal, thinking you have changed suddenly or become distant without reason, but the truth is more profound. You are becoming more yourself than ever before, peeling back layers of conditioning and rediscovering your original awareness beneath them. This period of inwardness often brings unexpected clarity. You start understanding the patterns that shaped your old identity. You see your reactions more clearly, observe your triggers without merging with them, and sense how past experiences influence the way you once moved through the world. The more time you spend in this introspective state, the more your expanded perception becomes natural rather than overwhelming. Slowly, you grow comfortable inhabiting this new awareness. And as this integration unfolds, something begins to shift again. You feel a subtle pull to re-engage with life, but not in the way you once did. It is a different kind of movement, one guided by intention rather than habit, by awareness rather than expectation, leading you toward a new way of existing within the world you briefly stepped away from. As the inner integration settles, you begin to feel a quiet readiness to return to the external world, but this time with an entirely new orientation. You no longer move through life searching for belonging in the places that once defined you. Instead, you move with a sense of inner grounding, choosing your interactions with intention rather than habit. The world has not changed, but the way you step into it has. Crowds no longer pull you into their rhythm. Social expectations no longer shape your choices. The noise that once clouded your awareness now passes by without disturbing the clarity you have cultivated. This selective return is one of the most liberating stages of awakening. You re-enter life without carrying the emotional weight that once overwhelmed you. You know how to preserve your energy, how to recognize misalignment, how to listen to the quiet signals of your intuition. You choose relationships that nurture your depth rather than drain it. You gravitate toward conversations that expand your awareness rather than shrink it. You allow yourself to be present without dissolving into the chaos of others. This is not distancing, it is sovereignty. You begin to understand that spiritual awakening was never about separating yourself from the world forever. It was about learning to walk through it without losing yourself. And now, Each step feels more deliberate, more authentic, more aligned with the person you have become. Even in the presence of noise, you can find stillness. Even in the presence of superficiality, you can remain rooted in depth. You no longer fear the world's energy because you are no longer shaped by it. You shape your own. With this new clarity, life begins to unfold differently. Opportunities feel more aligned. Connections feel more genuine. Your path feels less like something you must search for and more like something you naturally follow. And as you move forward, there is a quiet recognition that this inner transformation is not the end of anything. It is the beginning of a deeper way of living, perceiving, and connecting. If you have arrived at a key, leave a comment saying this message was for me, so I know you felt this journey deeply. And if this content helped you see your own awakening with more clarity, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like to support this space. There is a video right here that expands this conversation in a way that might resonate even more with where you are now. Click and continue the path with me there.